Hello and welcome to Paranormal Queen. This is your host, Lisa Lano. And today we are going to talk about something that is very interesting to most of us, and that's Bigfoot. Bigfoot. We've all heard about Bigfoot. But what is Bigfoot? Is it a human? Is it an ape? Is it a combination of both? Some kind of a hybrid? Or is it just folklore? Well, there's many opinions, and you should think what you want. But there's an awful lot of people that have said that they have had encounters or have seen what we call Bigfoot all through the United States and Canada. Called other things other places, like the Yeti, but that's another story. Countless people have come forward to say that they've had encounters, and you can probably find tons of them all over YouTube and every place else. But what makes this special to me, anyway, is that the person that I know has been a longtime friend of mine, and she's had encounters, more than one, and she's a librarian. She's an anthropology major as well, but her job is a librarian, and she's been a librarian for many, many years. And I don't feel like she would put her career on the line of being crazy if she wasn't telling the truth. So let's talk to Desiree. We're going to call her Desi and see what she's got to say about all this. Okay, so we have Desi here, who I have known for probably about 12 or 13 years anyway. And why don't you tell people what you do for work?
I'm a public librarian in South Hadley.
Okay, so there you have it. She is not a crazy person.
She's not in that way.
Yeah. Right. She's got a real job, and this is a very intelligent woman, a very scientific woman who will debunk just about everything, but she can't debunk these things. So let's get started. Why don't you tell us about the first experience that you had?
All right, so I was 5 years old. I grew up in Humboldt County, California, best known in the Bigfoot world for the Patterson-Gimlin film that happened up in Willow Creek. Mm-hmm. I grew up in southern Humboldt at Pacific Lumber Company, which is now a defunct company. We would go to Eddersburg, which is in they call it Kings Mountain, Kings Range. We is me, my grandfather, Pete Silbernagel, my grandmother Alice, my father and mother, okay, and my other sister.
So family.
So we'd all head down every summer, and it was a place where you could go swimming, and it was on private land because there was always, we'd stop at someone's house that my grandfather knew, being that he was essentially a public figure, being a barber, and had lots of friends, and we'd go there, and there was an old, looked like a 1890s stove for this camp space. Okay. And we always had a World War II Army tent that they would put up, and we would have cots that we would lay on. And my first experience was, my sister were actually in the wood space, the redwood tree space, and we were building with sticks. We were building like a cabin, all these things, and like think Tinker Toys, but much bigger. And I'm definitely dating myself. And we put a roof on it, and it was just. We ended up. It was just tall enough where if I was on my knee, I could stand up on my knees and look around. Well, my sister had already decided she was done, and she was
younger or older?
Younger sister, okay, by 3 years. Okay. It was just me and her at that time. Okay. And so she went down to where my parents were. Now my father, he's hearing, my mother is deaf. So we're both CODAs, children of deaf adults. And so anyway, my father is telling my mother, oh, we need to plant this row, we need to plant that row. And I was still up playing in the little cabin that we made. And I started to feel like I was being watched. Mm-hmm. So I started to slowly spin around on my knee and looking through the tree line just to see if I could see anything. Because we used to encounter black bears, we used to encounter deer. I've seen.
So it could have been animals.
It could have been
Right,
animals,
yeah.
So I'm looking around, looking around, looking around. I'm not hearing or seeing anything, but I'm getting more and more scared. So I crawled out of the cabin, and in my mind, I'm like, okay, don't run. Because if you run, they're going to, as a predator would, they would go after you. Right. So I started skipping. I don't skip. I've never skipped in my entire life. So I'm skipping down the road, and I get down there to where my mother and father are. And I kind of go over to where my sister is, and she was laying down in the freshly tilled dirt, which was kind of warm, and starting to doze off. And I went and just sat as close as I could next to her, and she's like, "What's wrong?" And I was like, "Nothing, just felt weird." And in that, it was hairy. It was facing the tent, so I could see the front of it. It was kind of dark here. You couldn't really see the eyes, but you could tell it was all furry. It had hands because it was holding, like I said, a stick and poking around.
Hands like ours.
Hands like ours, yeah.
Were they furry?
I couldn't tell. I was 5, so I can't really.
They were hands.
But they were hands, and I just knew it was squatting down. And I remember thinking to myself, "That's interesting," and I rolled over and went back to sleep. Thought nothing about
This is getting quite interesting, don't you think? Because I'm really involved here and really interested. And here again, this is not the last of Bigfoot for this lady. And we're going to go back and listen to some more right now. Now, Desi's had 3 encounters with Bigfoot. And the second one, although it's not as straightforward as the first and the third, where she actually encountered it and saw it close up, it's creepier. So take a listen to the second one, and then we'll go to the last. So we're back with Desiree, Desi for short, and I'd like to know about the second Bigfoot encounter that you had.
Okay. So the second one, I was about 7, 8 years old, and we used to go to a farm in Pepperwood, California, where me and my family, we would help plant things there. We would help pull weeds. I pulled enough weeds in my life, but we get a portion of that food from this family that we would. It was very, very poor. Not even, we'd work a little bit, and they would give us some of the fresh food, fresh vegetables. There was an upper field, a swath of redwood trees with like a dirt road through it, and then a backfield. And my family was with the truck in the backfield. If you feel lost, you stand still. You wait for someone. If you see this, make noise. I mean, right. We knew by 5 years old to get big and make lots of noise if you saw anything, right. That kind of stuff. Right. So you were just taught at a young age, being in the wilderness, how to survive. My sister were actually in the woods and looking through the tree line just to see if I could see anything. Because we used to encounter black bears, we used to encounter deer. I've seen. So it could have been animals. It could have been animals, So I'm looking around, looking around. I'm not hearing or seeing anything, but I'm getting more and more scared. So I crawled out of the cabin, and in my mind, I'm like, okay, don't run. Because if you run, they're going to, as a predator would, they would go after you. Right. So I started skipping. I don't skip. I've never skipped in my entire life. So I'm skipping down the road, and I get down there to where my mother and father are. And I kind of go over to where my sister is, and she was laying down in the freshly tilled dirt, which was kind of warm, and starting to doze off. And I went and just sat as close as I could next to her, and she's like, "What's wrong?" And I was like, "Nothing, just felt weird." At tree line, we look over and we could see something big going through the woods, like you could hear it. And my father was looking over, and mother kept just saying, what, in sign language.
Oh, because she couldn't hear.
Because she couldn't hear. Yeah. She kept saying, what do you see? And it went through the area. Now, mind you, on the other side of that second field that I was talking about was the Eel River down below. So whatever it was, I think was trying to get around to the river, But the part that freaked us out was we actually heard a scream, a deep scream that started out really low and got really high sounding, and then went back down. And you could feel it in your chest. And that's what my father just said. Everyone get in the truck, we're going.
So it wasn't human or animal necessarily?
I've heard cougar scream. I've heard elk. It was nothing I had heard before.
And it didn't sound like a person screaming either.
No.
So that's what I'm saying.
It had aspects of, it sounded like a woman scream in some respects, but it wasn't, it was the deep part to the high part that was weird. And then it kept going. And that was the part that was weird.
So did it seem like a call? Like, I'm asking you to think back, your opinion, I want to know. Like,
it sounded pissed, is what it sounded like.
So it wasn't just like a call to somebody else or something? It was like get out?
It was a get out kind of call.
Like, is that what your gut tells you?
That's what our gut tells me, yeah. We ended up finishing a little bit of the road because my father made a promise that he would finish X amount, but we all did it at once.
Yeah.
So it was done really quick, and then we all got in the truck and we left. And when we got home, on the ride there, Mom just kept saying, what was that? What was that? Because she could feel it. And she's deaf.
Did she see it?
She did not see it. We didn't see, like I said, we just saw
something running through
something
the woods.
Going through the woods. It was more of the bushes, like moving. So you're like,
okay.
What the heck is it?
And you could say, well, that's probably an animal, but that
right.
combined with the scream.
The scream is what solidified, and then as I've gotten older and have heard screams that have been recorded, I was like, that was what I've heard.
Oh my goodness.
And that was what was it. I was able to look back and be like, okay, that was what was going on. Do you know what I mean? So that was hindsight, but it was still terrifying.
If you could, and you may not be able to remember this, but if you could remember back, the rustling in the trees, you know how a deer would be low, a bear would be...
No, my first thought was cow or elk, which are bigger, but they don't go like that. The elk I've seen, they prefer to try to get out into the field, and they would have come out in the field.
Was it going fast?
It was going fast. So,
I know elks can go fast.
Yeah, but no.
Not in between trees.
No. But it was also, they also would go out to the clearing first.
Right.
They would just go through. They wouldn't care. This was going down that swath of trees to not be seen. And that was what was weird about it.
Okay. And just to be fair, you were brought up with this. So you knew the dangers. You knew the different types of animals and predators.
We played all the time. I'm a Gen Xer. We played all the time in the woods.
It's quite interesting, don't you think? Because I'm really involved here and really interested. And here again, this is not the last of Bigfoot for this lady. And we're going to go back and listen to some more right now. Okay, let's talk about another encounter you've had.
So this is the last encounter I had. I was once again in Humboldt County. It was, my grandfather had passed about, at this point, it'd be about 12 years ago. And I had to fly into San Francisco. We couldn't get a flight, those extra 250 miles to Northern California.
How old were you roughly?
This is 30, I was probably 34.
Okay, so you're an adult.
I was an adult, full-on adult, ready working in the library. Like I said, Grandpa had passed. Come to find out, Grandma passed, and then Grandpa passed 2 weeks later. Couldn't get a flight, so had to drive up and drive back to catch the flight out of San Francisco. This was at 2 in the morning, driving from the town of Scotia to San Francisco. I was going around a bend near, let's see, it was down by, if you know the area, there was Confusion Hill, it's called. And I remember driving and seeing something on the side of the road. And I was in a rental car. And so I was like, okay, that's weird. Now, we have a lot of hippies, don't get me wrong. You know, a lot of people who hitchhike at night and whatnot. But the weird part was, once again, it was squatting on the side of the road. And I had slowed down because it just looked weird. What am I looking at?
Using the restroom.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and because I've seen all that, but I was like, what is it? I slowed down and I'm looking, and this face that's looking at me was curious, but it kind of like looked at me, and then it would look down the road, and it would look at me, and then look down the road. And my first thought, like I said, one of my undergrad degrees is in anthropology, right? And my first thought was, don't show teeth. Teeth is aggression.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm
That's good to know.
waving at this thing, and then part of me wants to get out. I want to get out of the car. I want to get out of the car.
How far away from it were you?
From here to the end of that table, so not quite
not
6
far.
feet.
Oh my goodness, that's close.
Yeah, it's close. So you have me driving the passenger
saw
seat.
this
was close up.
Yeah.
And like I said, it was squatting. It was down, and it kept looking away from me. It kept looking down the road.
Could you tell how big it might have been? If it's
Not until it stood up.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
So that's okay. So I'm looking, and I'm trying to wave. I'm thinking to myself, I got to get out. I want to get out. I want to talk to this thing. I want to encounter this thing, etc. And I say thing only because it was hairy looking. The face had human features, but it was off.
Okay.
And but it was also huge, like bigger. So it was off. But in my brain, I'm like, okay, no, you have to hit, you can't afford to miss this plane. You have to go. So as I started to go, it stood up and walked behind the car, and I remember hitting my brakes so the lights would turn on so I could see it better, and I can only see it up to its side hip. So that's how tall it was.
Oh, that's tall.
So I kept going, and next to it, this area was a ravine when you go to turn, and it was a deeper ravine, and there was 5 deer there. So it was currently hunting.
Oh my goodness.
So it's a good thing I didn't get out of the car. But I remember going then into Garberville, which is the next bigger town that at the time you had to go through. There was no bypass.
Right.
And I went to this mobile station in this dinky little, restroom with that funky light,
Yeah.
And I'm just looking at myself in the mirror, and I'm like, okay. I know now what I saw at 5. I know now what I saw.
I was going to ask you that. If it brought
It completely, like, it solidified what I saw. And it made me go, I now know what the heck I saw. And I remember being at the San Francisco airport. So I drop everything off, and I get on the phone with my husband, and I'm like, no, you don't understand. I got to talk to you about this. And he's like, okay. Like, my husband, he's always said to me, I believe you think you saw what you saw, but I can't verify it because I wasn't there. But yeah, it was I always thought that was just an interesting encounter. So I was able to, I had one hearing encounter and then 2 visual encounters that were able to verify.
This has been amazing. And I want to thank you so much for your time. You are such a nice person, a great librarian, a good friend, just a good person. And I mean that, you know that.
Thank you.
And I appreciate you telling your story and saying who you are and all
Absolutely.
that. So thank you. This has been great. You're awesome.
Thank you. You have a good one.
You too. So there you have it. An interview with somebody I know personally who really did see Bigfoot 3 times. I hope you enjoyed. And if you did, feel free to comment, like, follow, subscribe, and give me your comments and suggestions. Let me know if any of this resonates with you, if something has happened to you with Bigfoot or anything else that's paranormal. And remember, paranormal simply means anything that science cannot explain. So it doesn't have to be a ghost, it doesn't have to be Bigfoot, it could be a demon, an angel, a past life experience, a near-death experience, whatever, anything that we cannot scientifically explain yet. You can reach me at queenparanormal.com. All my info is on there, or just leave comments from wherever you're watching this, and I will see you soon with something else and something different. Have a good one.